Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? I'm so pleased to welcome you today to the 24th William R. and Erlyn J. Gould Lecture on Technology and the Quality of Life. I'm Alberta Comer, Dean of the J. Willard Marriott Library and University Librarian. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be part of this important and long-standing series. I want to extend a warm welcome to everyone from the community and to our faculty, staff, and students, and to the Gould family members who are here with us today. Those family members are Gilbert and his wife, Nina. Gilbert's the chair of the Gould Advisory Board, Wayne and his wife, Jeanette, Bill and his wife, Carol, and Erlyn Gould Madsen and her husband, Dwayne. Welcome to all of you. This lecture series was founded by William and Erlyn Gould on the premise that better understanding of technology and its application can aid humanity to find a stronger path to greater social potential. Along with this premise was their desire to open a dialogue among the engineer, the philosopher, the humanist, the private citizen, and all who wish to assert an active voice in our collective future. They recognized that the library as place connects people from all walks of life with ideas from many different perspectives. It's a place that fosters deep and fruitful conversation. The Marriott Library aids in this conversation through its extensive collections and resources. We provide material for individuals who are researching topics that range from folklore to space exploration, from heart transplants to ancient history, and even to drones. This lecture series extends the library's mission to inspire the creation, the discovery, and the use of knowledge for Utah and beyond. The original lecture series was created with the help and continuous involvement of our friend, the late Dr. Floyd O'Neill, following a meeting in October of 1991 with William Gould. Dr. O'Neill was a charter member of the advisory board. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Daniel Reed, who will introduce today's speaker. Dr. Reed is a Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs and Professor of Computer Science and Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of Utah. Previously, he served as the University of Iowa's Vice President for Research and Economic Development, Microsoft's Corporate Vice President for Technology Policy and Extreme Computing, the founding director of the Renaissance Computing Institute at UNC Chapel Hill, the head of computer science at the University of Illinois, and the director of the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. He received his bachelor's degree from Missouri University of Science and Technology and his master's and Ph.D. degrees from Purdue University. Please join me in a warm welcome for Dr. Reed.
Thank you, Alberta. I'm pleased to welcome you all here. And it was my pleasure last night as a newcomer to the University of Utah, I've been here now 3 months, to have dinner with the Gould family and talk about the wonderful legacy that this lecture, this room, and so many other pieces are a recognition of the incredible contributions that the Gould family has made to the state of Utah, to the country, to the world, and to the University of Utah. What I want to do now is, as Alberta said, introduce our lecturer today. And as you can see, there are some interesting toys, which I'm sure Cam will talk about. He moved to Tremonton, Utah at age 6. And he tells me that when he came to the University of Utah, he spent 100 days a year skiing and eventually got a bachelor's degree. Still skis, but skiing does not define his life. He got a bachelor's and a master's degree here at the University of Utah, a Ph.D. At the University of Washington in Seattle, and joined us in 2004. He's currently an associate professor in the College of Engineering in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. And his research interests include, as you will hear today, drones and associated technologies, but high-performance positioning systems for nanotechnology, electroactive polymer structures in emergency response and environmental monitoring, and of course, the topic of today's talk. He's been supported by the Department of Defense, the National Science Foundation, the Department of Energy. He's one of the rising stars among the great faculty in the College of Engineering, and this lecture represents what is truly a partnership driven by the generosity and support of the Gould family and its importance in supporting great research and scholarship on campus. And so with that, let me turn the floor over to Cam.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And I want to thank everyone for being here, especially over the lunch period. I do want to thank Dr. Reed for the nice introduction. And it is true, I do like to ski, and I do ski a lot still. I also want to thank, of course, the Gould family. Dean Brown, unfortunately, he can't make it today. The President's Office and the Advisory Board for the invitation and this very unique opportunity to talk about what I think a very exciting technology, and also the research work that I'm passionate about. So let me tell you first that the work that I do is generally in control systems and robotics. And what I have up front here are a collection of drones. And after this talk, I do encourage you, if you have time, come up and see them. My graduate students are all sitting back there, and they're going to come up as well afterwards to answer any technical questions that you might have. So before I talk about robots that fly, I'm going to talk very quickly and very briefly about the history of robotics here at the University of Utah. So to start, robotics started roughly back in 1973 with the hire of Dr. Stephen Jacobson. Many of you know Steve. He graduated from the U. He did his Ph.D. at MIT. And he was a brilliant individual, very innovative, and had a knack for pushing the boundaries of robotics. So Steve started many companies, of course, including Sarcos, which is a local robotics company here. And he made headlines with his teleoperated humanoid robots, as well as the exoskeleton. And that's essentially the big beginnings of the Iron Man suit. So I was lucky enough to meet Steve back when I was an undergrad, back in the mid to late 90s. And was really seeing a lot of his creations in the Center of Engineering Design Lab and also at Sarcos that fueled my interest to work in this area. Now, Steve had a vision back then to build up the robotics program here. And so he and Professor Tom Henderson in computer science got together and led efforts to hire John Hollerbach, who's one of the most well-respected individuals in the field. And then in 2004, John and several other robotics faculty, Dr. Mark Miner and Stephen Mascaro, got together and formalized the master's and PhD track in robotics. More recently, January 2016, the robotics group here consolidated into the University of Utah Robotics Center. And we roughly have about a dozen faculty between School of Computing and Mechanical Engineering working together collaboratively, teaching and doing research in robotics in a lot of different areas, including healthcare robotics, autonomous vehicles, robot learning, vision, and even micro nanosystems. And as you can see here, our group is fairly active in research with funding from major federal agencies as well as industry support. But one of the best things about the center, for me at least, is that we have a lot of enthusiastic students, graduate students and undergrads alike, working in the area of robotics. Now, I want to point out very quickly here is that over the years, robotics has changed significantly. And we are all working together to push the boundaries of robotics. And so I'm not going to talk about this here, but for example, in my lab, we're developing new 3D printing techniques, working with specialized materials so that we can 3D print soft robots with integrated artificial muscles so they can essentially walk right out of the printer. We hope that some of this stuff will impact the way we design prosthetics, of course, and also other healthcare-related applications. So I've been working in the drones technology area for about 5 years now. And what I'm going to do here is start off with a personal story. And this story motivated me to think about drones. And this story also ends up with me saying, gee, there has to be a faster and more efficient way to do this. As Dr. Reed mentioned, I do like to ski. So about 5 years ago, I was in the Lofoten Islands in Norway, just north of the Arctic Circle, doing some ski mountaineering with some close friends. Now, I want to emphasize here that at the end of the day, nobody was hurt. And importantly, we were all being very, very careful. All of us have more than 20 years of experience, each of us, in the mountains. But you know what? Accidents happen. And I want to share this story with you in the form of a video that I captured first-person view. Okay? As you can see here, I was involved in an avalanche. Okay? I was taken for a ride for about 35 seconds, the ride of my life. When everything came to a stop, the first thing that came to my mind was, where are my friends? But unfortunately, all was accounted for except for one person. And that person was down at the bottom of the hill, buried underneath the snow. So at that moment, we were all faced with the daunting task of taking one of these, and it's a transceiver. It's something that I wear, that we all wear, to go look for a buried victim if the need arises. Statistics now show that more than 50% of people that are buried suffocate within 15 minutes. Okay? 90% are dead in 35 to 40 minutes. So finding a buried victim, digging them out, takes time, all right? In addition, it's stressful and emotional for the people that are involved. Drone technology was something that could possibly help us with this problem. And so over the years, my group has focused on this specific problem in general, and that is locating things that we care about as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Now, what if we could possibly dronify this transceiver? I pull it off, throw it in the air, and it flies, locates a victim, marks the location, less than a minute, less than 30 seconds, as quick as it takes for me to pull out the shovel and probe out of my pack. That would be fantastic. What if we can release a fleet of drones with special sensors? Fly out, smell, detect chemicals, locate them, model them. We can do a lot of things in terms of mitigation of disasters and potential problems. So for the rest of this talk, I'm going to talk about this drone technology. I'm going to talk about what's being done now. I'm going to talk about where it's headed. I'll give you a little bit of insight. And then, of course, there are challenges ahead with this technology. All right, so when I say the word drone, I don't think you're thinking of this little guy, right? But what I want you to do is don't throw him out of the picture, because we're going to come right back to him and his friends. So what is a drone exactly? Well, in the technical community, they're referred to as unmanned aerial vehicles, or simply flying robots. There's no crew on board, no passengers. They can be flown remotely, for example, shown here by one of my graduate students, or they can be deployed completely autonomously. Okay? Now, drones have a very interesting history. The first idea was an aerial torpedo, where you basically take a torpedo and catapult it into the air. So that was during the First World War. And then eventually people figured out how to radio control them. Okay? And so in the 30s and 40s, these were radio-controlled drones. And the British, of course, came up with a model called the Queen Bee. We think that's where the term drone comes from. Okay? Now, they're primarily used for target practice. Over the years, the technology continued to develop, of course. And then 17 years ago yesterday, we had 9/11 in 2001. Okay? Shortly thereafter, these things started to appear in the media. They made, obviously, controversial headlines with their use for surveillance, reconnaissance, and, of course, targeted attacks. Okay? This is an MQ-9 Reaper, otherwise known as the Predator B. It is a weaponized drone, but not all drones in the military are weaponized. Okay? Some, of course, are used for enhanced situational awareness. Okay? About a month ago, I met a gentleman at a meeting, and he told me that his son uses one of these. Okay? This is a Black Hornet Nano. It's about 4 inches long. It flies for a mile. It could stay aloft for 25 minutes. It costs $195,000. It carries 3 cameras, visible, night, and also a thermal camera for heat signature detection. And then 2006 rolls along, and there's a tiny company that pops up out of a dorm room out of China called Dajing Industries, DJI, okay? And then a year later, we see the iPhone. Everybody loves the iPhone, okay? The iPhone was introduced, and this was about the time when electronics were shrinking. And so we all call this the drone stone ages for commercial and business drones. The technology shrinks. Now there are a lot of things flying around. And so, of course, 2012, the FAA decides, okay, we've got a problem on our hands. So the FAA Modernization and Reform Act was created to deal with how to integrate drones, computer-sized drones, into the national airspace. Okay? Shortly thereafter, 6 states in the US were chosen as test sites. And what's the future to hold? Well, let's see. So why are drones so important? And why are they useful? Well, let's try to answer that question really quickly. Drones are useful because of the fact that they can efficiently move around in 3-dimensional space. Okay? They are less expensive compared to, say, for example, a helicopter with a crew or a large plane with the crew. A lot of us think of them simply as a truck. Okay? They can carry things, right? They can carry a payload. The payload can be sensors, it could be computing. They could be data information gathering tools that allow us to make decisions for certain applications, of course. Now, when a drone is programmed with smarts and decision-making capabilities, they can actually help us solve problems. Drones can, of course, come to the rescue to make certain tasks easier, safer, and provide us with more and richer information. Okay. Now, all throughout history, we've always wanted to fly, right? And we built contraptions to fly. One of the theories that I think is that we want to fly is I think we're just tired of seeing the world from the weeds from this point of view, down on the surface of the Earth. One of the most popular payloads right now for a drone is this. It's a camera, okay? It's for both videos and pictures. The reason why it's so popular is I believe that we like to have a different perspective on things, okay? We want a bird's eye view. Now, again, this is controversial in a sense of privacy. Okay? But privacy aside, though, we have to understand that drone pictures are actually very beautiful. Right? So this is a photograph of San Francisco. And this one here is of a nice, calm beach with some colorful canoes. And here, even at the U, we use drones to take pictures of the campus, right? To get a different perspective. Notice this perspective. There's a lot of red. Right? Now, drone photos and videos, feeds can be used to help save lives. For example, this is a picture after Hurricane Katrina. And you can see here very quickly, you can assess damage. But more importantly, you can use it to find survivors and victims. You can use that information to also direct resources where it's needed. Okay. So where exactly is this industry going? Now, I don't have a crystal ball in front of me here. I have the internet, of course. And so let me share with you some thoughts on where the industry is going, where, and what people are thinking about the industry. Okay? So predictions are telling us this. The drone market, okay, the revenue, is going to blow up, right? So in the next 4 to 5 years, we're looking at a $15 billion industry. Okay? And by that point, you'll see 12, 15, 20,000 drones per year that are fully autonomous that will be deployed. By then, the US and China will have 50% of the market share, okay? The other 50, everybody else. Remember that company I talked to you about in 2006? DJI? This is one of their platforms right here, okay? That company last year had a revenue of $2.7 billion, okay? And it's founded by Frank Wong out of his dorm room at the University of Hong Kong. This company is now moving into different business spaces. For example, agriculture, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go. Okay? So, to tell you drone is disruptive is true. It is disruptive in a sense that it's game-changing for a lot of the things that we want them to do and for many applications. Now, Dwayne, I have a slide for you, and this is it. This is the 2018 drone market space. okay? It's an eyesore. I see that. Everybody's squinting as they're looking at it. It's okay. There are 1,000 companies here this year that are essentially the who's who's in drone technology. And I want to make something that's really important here. This is a very diverse market. It's not just hardware. We're talking about insurance, marketplace, user groups, coalitions, events, conferences. Up in the left-hand corner here, something to watch out for in the next few years is agriculture, okay? It's kind of small, but it's actually going to grow. Another one that's a sliver over on the right-hand side I want to point everybody's attention to is counter-drone technology. The more we put these up in the air, the more we're going to need counter-drone technologies to mitigate potential threats. It could be hardware and it could be software. So let's look at this year at a couple areas of drone in the drone business area. So this year we saw about a 118% increase in the market space for real estate. Since the get-go, since the beginning, the real estate industry has embraced drones. The real estate people that sell homes love to have drone photos of properties and estates and what have you. And people that buy homes, of course, enjoy seeing beautiful pictures. Surveying and inspection was 171% this last year. And inspection is a very important thing. And I'll give you one example of inspection here. And we were talking about this last night with wind turbines. So here's an example of a wind turbine system. It needs to be inspected regularly. So inspectors have to climb up this thing, crawl inside, and the blades have to be inspected. And so drones can assist human inspectors at doing a better job and a more efficient job, but importantly, a safer job. There's agriculture, okay, at 172%. This is a photo of a vineyard taken by a drone. Okay? In agriculture, the buzz is precision ag, where the goal is to improve farmers' profits and harvest yields while reducing negative impacts on farming, on the environment that comes from over-application of chemicals. Aerial photos like this give us information, right? It gives us a bird's eye view, of course. Drones can carry sophisticated cameras and also sensors that can be used to gather information that helps farmers farm better, do what they do better, right, and more efficiently. So just to give you an example, this is an image of a cornfield flown with a camera, and it's a thermal camera by a drone, and it turns out there's a correlation between the thermal image and the crop yield, okay? That's very important for a farmer because they can predict yield. They can actually use that information to manage resources and to make predictions for profit, right? And if things don't go well, for example, in the center here, gee, I'm not sure why we're not getting any yield there. Well, what you could do is you could take a drone and you can add multispectral cameras. Cameras that see different wavelengths of light, and that allows you to assess things like vegetation density, water deficit, as well as crop stress. Okay? And again, this can inform farmers on how best to manage crops for precision agriculture. Drones are good at carrying things, right? Not just sensors and cameras, but they can carry, for example, pesticides or fertilizers and other types of substances that can help farmers better manage their crops, okay? More cost effectively and more efficiently, especially compared to traditional methods of maybe tractors and other means. Okay? This is an example of a commercial crop spraying drone that could be purchased currently. Koch Industry, the owner of Matador Cattle Company. Matador operates over 3 states, okay? Texas, Kansas, and Montana. They deal with over 460,000 acres of land, about 1,500 head of cattle, okay? And what they're doing is they're looking at drones to help them herd, okay? Livestock management, and just overall operations management.
To herd, to spot signs of sickness, and to survey during burns.
This last year, mining and construction was 200%, over 200%. And as you can see here, this is a very important industry, of course, and the future is bright for construction with drones. I want to point out that in construction sites, drones are employed now to do surveys, building detailed 3D maps, which is really, really important, especially for earth removal, okay? And also just overall site management, right? Drones that are combined with computer vision and other software-like tools can be used to importantly assess risk of the construction site. OSHA reports that approximately 1,000 fatalities happen each year just on a construction site, okay? And so drones could help reduce that number. Drones can also search for leaks, gas leaks, which I will talk a little bit later, and provide life-saving on-site medical attention as quickly as possible. It's lunchtime, right? Anybody hungry? I think we need to talk about the delivery problem, okay? So, the latest movie by Steven Spielberg, Ready Player One, shows us that in the year 2045, we're going to have drones deliver pizza to us, okay? Sounds a little bit sci-fi, but in reality, it's probably potentially could happen. Companies like Pizza Hut and Domino's, for example. And here are some stats just to throw out there. So Domino's, for example, globally, each day delivers over 1 million pizzas. Okay? The cost of delivery is between $3.50 and say maybe $5, $4.99. I heard it might go up a little bit. Consumers are not all that excited about increased prices of delivery. Okay? So why deliver pizzas with drones? It's economics, right? To lower the cost, okay? To make it more efficient. I don't think it'll happen, though, until well beyond 2020, okay? Because there are issues, of course. We'll talk about those. Regulations, right? Technical issues, and overall consumer and customer acceptance. I love to online shop. For me, it is the everything store, okay? Now, Amazon last year shipped over 5 billion items through Prime, okay? Online retail is expected to double in 5 years. So by then, Amazon will ship at least one item to each of us across the world. It's amazing. It's hard for me to even imagine that. If our online habits continue to grow, traditional delivery methods will probably not cut it, right? And this is what experts are going to say. Well, we're probably going to see some additional congestion if it hasn't already happened, okay? And so drones could be a possible solution to this problem, right? We do need to find a safe and efficient solution. And of course, Amazon has been working on this, so they've really pushed forward this technology. They are currently testing, not here, of course, on a fairly small scale. You can find out about that information, of course. And they're gathering customer feedback. They're trying to figure out the technical issues so that they can try to implement this, provided regulations are favorable. Okay? And other companies, of course, are doing the same. Now, this, I think, is appropriate to bring up. We are in the beehive state. So this is a beehive. Remember the little drone that I showed you where here's his friends, okay? Now, so interestingly, last year, Amazon's patent was this. They call it a multi-level fulfillment center, okay, where trucks come in and drones come out buzzing around. They would like to see one of these in large cities, major cities, for example, the Salt Lake Valley. It's a giant beehive, okay? It's a giant beehive for drones. All right, so I've talked about the business, some examples of business. Now let's talk a little bit about fun, okay? And so fun is, how many of you like to drive backwards through the rear view mirror of your camera? I know, I see some heads nods. Well, if you do, you're probably a good candidate for first-person view flying. So what you do is you wear one of these, and it's a heads-up display that shows you the video feed from your drone, and you use a remote control, and you can fly it as fast as you would like. So this is real-life Star Wars. You could go between 60 to 100 miles an hour, and I'll just show you the video.
You'll be a mind body, but for now it's time to run, it's time to run. Tomorrow is another day, when the night fades away, yeah. Whatever it takes, yeah, take me to the top, I'm ready for whatever it takes. 'Cause I love the adrenaline in my veins.
drone racing is the fastest growing sport. Okay? The Drone Racing League that started in 2015 started airing on ESPN with competitions here and all over the world. Okay? It's real life Star Wars, right? It's NASCAR, okay? It's Formula One, right? At very high speeds. And there's even talk that drone racing could make the Olympics someday. All right, let me go back to the original problem that I was trying to solve, okay? And I want to turn my attention, of course, to the idea of finding things that we care about as quickly as possible. And this is, in my mind, using drone technologies, right? So can drones come to the rescue? Well, again, drones are attractive because of their ability to fly in, fly around, right, and get out of disaster zones and hard to reach places without endangering people, crew, okay? And you could do that at a fraction of the cost, okay? So let's look at what's being done and also talk about some advancements that could possibly be made with sensors and software, okay? And even artificial intelligence. So one of our industry partners, Drone America, based out of Reno, we've been working with several years now, their drone platforms are now designed to carry sophisticated sensors, of course, but here's one where they carry a thermal camera on their emergency response drones so that you can use them to detect people in need, right? Survivors or victims. And we're starting to see this type of application in the media. So for example, this summer in June in Norfolk, Virginia, a man was found 21 hours later. He was been missing for 21 hours, stuck in the marshes, and a drone was finally deployed to find and rescue the individual. Okay? The rescue operations in Thailand with the soccer team, though drones were deployed there, not necessarily to look for the soccer team, but to look for access into the caves, easier access into the caves. Several years ago, we all thought that drones would help us with wildfire management and aid in rescue. Yes and no. It is true, they're easy and cheaper to deploy, they can gather information, but it turns out that reality is that they don't mix right now, okay? And so the FAA, I get these blurbs all the time through email. Drones and wildfires do not mix, particularly consumer drones, simply because they are interrupting fire management operations. And in fact, it is illegal to interfere with fire operations, fire rescue and management operation. If you do that with a drone, it's not good. The applications and the use of drones in this scenario is still being debated. However, drones can be used, I think, for fire rescue. And here's an example, right? They could help us, in this case, enter a building, look for victims, okay? This is a hard problem to solve. You can remotely fly a drone using this setup here to enter a building. They're very agile. However, they do require a very skilled pilot, okay? So in my lab, along with others around the world, we're currently developing new techniques to create autonomous drones, okay? Ones that could possibly use vision, right? And sensors to detect and avoid, to fly into and out of a dangerous area, right, for recon. And let me show you a very quick demo of what we're doing now. And this is an autonomous drone that uses vision to fly through a window, all on its own. You might ask, why? Well, here's another demo where it's going to fly in and out of a small house, all on its own. Now, watch the video feed from the drone. We have a simulated victim inside of the house. So when disaster strikes, saving lives, keeping people safe, obviously are top priorities. Drones can be used to search, right, both inside and outside. Hard to reach places, do damage assessment, set up communication links, deliver medicine, food, and supplies. Okay? Unfortunately, there are hidden dangers that we cannot simply see, such as chemicals, gas, radioactive material leaks, and even contamination following a disaster. So, drones are equipped with specialized sensors, can be deployed to monitor the environment. And if they have enough smarts, they can localize where the source is, direct crews on where to go or where not to go, okay, in this type of situation. So we're currently working on this problem, and it's related to that original problem that I talked to you about, the avalanche, finding things that we care about as quickly and as efficiently as possible. The technology that we're developing currently can be applied to other things. For example, environmental monitoring, monitoring oil rigs, pipeline, and other places where dangerous chemicals or substances may exist. And so let me introduce to you the Epsilon Pegasi project out of my lab. We also call it ENIF. And ENIF is actually the brightest star in the northern constellation of Pegasus. It's actually the nose, right? The star that represents the nose. ENIF also stands for Electronic Nose in Flight. Okay? So we're working with a chemical sensing company, and they've developed this really neat little sensor. I'm sorry, I can't give you this. This thing can detect 32 different chemicals. It can identify the chemicals, gives us concentration. It also provides us with environmental information, temperature, humidity, pressure. If you marry that sensor with the drone, what you can end up actually do, along with artificial intelligence, okay, and software, information theory, and even swarming capabilities, we can develop a fleet of drones that can detect, map, and localize contaminant sources as quickly as possible. So recently, we've been doing some field tests out in the desert. That's Pilot Mountain, by the way, out by Wendover. So we recently had some successful field tests where a group of our robots were able to map a small simulated gas leak. And for simulated, I mean this is a barbecue tank. So we use propane. So we basically let our barbecue go without lighting it, and it's just releasing propane. And again, when these robots are deployed, they do not know anything about where the source is. They find the source as they fly. In this first demonstration, we have 3 robots over here. They're indicated by the colored circles. And what we've had them to do is fly, split up the task, sense, and try to map the propane distribution in that area. This is a basic mapping problem. In this next one, we have a demonstration where we have drones swarm around the source. Okay? They don't know where the source is. They're using the sensor, and they're using swarming technology that we've developed to collect information so that they can swarm around the source. But what's important about this demonstration is that not only do they swarm around the source, but we use the sense information, the chemical information, and we build a map also of the chemical distribution. So we know the concentration levels throughout that area that they're swarming about. This final demonstration is a little bit more sophisticated. We've got 3 robots over on the left. They're all working together to localize this unknown gas source. And 2 of them will fly, 1 of them won't. But the one that doesn't fly isn't because it doesn't do anything, but it's actually using the information that it has at that location and coordinating with the rest of the robots so that they can map and localize the source. Now notice how this second robot approached the chemical source from the opposite side, simply because it was coordinating with the other robot and said, I'm not going to go where you go, I'm going to go a different path. Let's come back to this problem. Okay? So the algorithms that we developed can be applied here. And originally what I described was, can we dronify this transceiver? Yes, we believe we can. And so last year we started this project with several students to develop this concept. And more recently we have some simulations where we're basically saying if a robot, if this can be made to fly, if we could throw this in the air, it needs to fly for at most a minute or 2 minutes. It can use this to predict where the human victim is, which is here, and then as it flies around, it can localize and give us a better prediction about where the buried victim is, and hopefully the drone can also identify the location by marking the snow so we can get to that person as quickly as possible. Drones have potential, right, for delivering things. Obviously, I talked about the delivery problem, but this is one company, Zipline, that is commercial right now. It's not here in the States. They're commercial in Africa, simply due to the regulation environments over there for drones. And what they've done is they're delivering blood and vaccines. They've cut the time from 4 hours to 15
by
minutes.
using SMS or by using WhatsApp.
When you get those orders, you specify hospital X need blood product. Those products have been wrapped, and then after that, the package is handed to flight ops. You scan the package, and that's when you put the vehicle on the launcher. Vehicle will fly autonomously up to the hospital.
Zipline transport the blood to the patients to save the lives of population.
Iyo nabona ayo maraso nari gushobora gupfa. Igihe kuva basaba amaraso n'igihe yatugereyeho nta minota itanu irimo.
Nabona ayo maraso kumva naritabye Imana ko ariyo yagize umuntu.
There are ideas of creating drone ambulances. Here's an example of one where it's delivering a defibrillator, okay, when needed. And here's a new one that was just recently announced, and it's from a Latvia company, and what they're doing is firefighting. And so they're basically going to take the water to the fire with the drone. The nice thing about this system is it can fly up to about 1,000 feet. We don't have ladders that go that high. Remember the wind turbine that I talked about? They're taking this to de-ice the wind turbine blades as well. And they've also modified it so that they can pick up people out of the water or other dangerous locations. Okay, so I've talked about big drones. I've talked about kind of medium-sized ones. That one's kind of a little bit bigger than a medium-sized one. There are small drones, of course. And the real question is, how small can we go? All right? Remember this guy, the drone? Well, let's meet Professor Rob Wood out of Harvard. Over the last 15 years, he has really been pushing the boundaries of small, tiny flying machines. He has now been able to engineer this two-wing flying machine, okay? And it's not very big, 3 centimeters, of course. It models a bee. So let me go ahead and show you a video of this little guy. The wing beats at 120 times a second. He's been able to get it to hover, and more recently, he's gotten it to land on water, wiggle its way into the water, swim around, and then break the surface tension and fly out of the water by electrolysis, breaking up water into oxygen and hydrogen and igniting the hydrogen. Okay. So, is the sky the limit? Maybe, maybe not. I do want to point out that new technologies, though, of course, raises new ethical, legal, and practical challenges. Okay? So, I'm going to talk a little bit about rules and then some of the challenges that I think that we should pay attention to. Okay? All right, so what are the rules? Well, right now, they do keep changing, okay? So let me point that out. They change. Right now, though, if you want to fly commercially, go get a license. To all my research colleagues out there, if you've got a funded research program that has anything to do with drones, you need a license. So your students need a license, somebody needs a license, okay? You've got to stay below 400 feet. All right, the FAA loves 500 feet and above. 400 feet below, okay, right, for the most part. You've got to stay away from aircraft. If you're 5 miles within an airport, you need to pick up the phone and call the airport and let them know. you've got to operate now within line of sight. That's one of the restrictions that's holding us back from the drone delivery problem, okay? You cannot fly over crowds. And finally, no drugs and alcohol. And of course, there are other rules out there that you should pay attention to. In fact, I do and highly encourage you to go to knowbeforeyoufly.org or the FAA. So what does the public think about drones? In fact, what does the public think about civilian drone use? My colleague, Colleen Murray at the University of Nevada, she's a psychologist. I've been working with her for the last 3 or 4 years on one of our drone projects, and I'm very interested, of course, to see what the public's response is to drone use. So let me show you some data and some survey data that we've collected over the last 3 years. Now, this is an interesting result. We basically take drones and put different markings on them, symbols. For example, the American flag, the sheriff, police, Department of Homeland Security, search and rescue, and fire. People are okay and comfortable for the most part about search and rescue and fire. Okay? The American flag, not really. Okay? Department of Homeland Security, not really. Likewise with police and also sheriff. And that's simply because of the potential of privacy. There's a concern about invasion of privacy. What are the 3 major concerns out there with drone technology? Well, the public, over the last 3 years, has pointed out, our data suggests 3 main things, and these are not, these are very obvious, right? So privacy, security, and safety. Over the last 3 years, they haven't really changed much. They're obviously the 3 major concerns. I love the view of Salt Lake. I think many of you do too, but it could change to this, possibly, okay? Now, even if they restrict us to fly over highways and what have you, you might get this, okay? I'm not even sure if I'm okay with that either, okay? What happens if it rains or snows? And we get a lot of that here, right? We don't know. The technology hasn't been developed to that extent yet. We're not sure what the reliability is. So in closing, let me point out some challenges ahead, okay? Ensuring safety. That's #1 priority, of course. Ensuring safety, privacy, and security. Creating more robust and fault-tolerant systems. Mitigating and managing potential threats. Like I said, watch out for the counter-drone technology, that industry sector. That is something that will probably grow very quickly. We need to figure out how to develop a safe and effective traffic management system. Professor Tom Henderson in computer science has some ideas for that, and I think it's great. I think we're going to try to move forward with these ideas. How do you manage what gets thrown in the air? Is there going to be a traffic problem at some point? What about noise pollution? I mean, when these things fly, they sound like lawnmowers in the air. And then finally, education and training, and I think that's very important. How do we educate the public about the technology? How do we train them to effectively use it in a safe and respectable manner? All right, so I have to say thanks to my students. So this is a snapshot of my lab. All of this could not have been possible without the dedicated work of my students, graduate students and undergraduates alike. And I'm going to call them out by name because it's important. Joey Bourne, Jack He, Jake Steiner, Dijun Gould, Kyle Hoffman, Catherine Jensen, Cole Mortensen, he's sitting over there somewhere, Matthew Goodell, Damon Baris, and of course all of our collaborators, and importantly, the funding that we've had over the years, particularly the National Science Foundation and the Department of Defense that has really funded a lot of our drone work. And yes, we do have fun. So if you want to come out and fly with us when we do our test, you're more than happy to come tag along. Thank you very much.
Could you comment on how effective drones are in heavy winds, rain, and other elements such as that?
That's a really, really good question. The little tiny Black Hornet Nano that I showed can fly at winds of about 22 miles an hour, okay? Our systems here, I think, could probably deal with winds maybe not quite that high, okay? The commercial system here, this DJI one, which we've flown quite a bit outside, it's remarkable how well it reacts to wind and disturbances. They use a technique where they have cameras pointing down and obviously to the side, And what they do is use the vision, and they try to stabilize the image with the propellers and what have you. I can't give you an upper bound, you know, but certainly 20, 30 miles an hour is definitely doable, right, these days. Of course, we do want them, you know, more effective, of course, and more stable and safe at higher speeds. Yep.
There is another aspect of it at the international level, which is not of the technical this, and my question after explaining that would be to you, does that, as a technical researcher, does it ever come to your mind, in the sense that we know that people, the politicians and others are raising questions everywhere, useful at the same time, the fact that it can cause you to go and kill without any danger to your own army has raised some problems in the psychological world. A professor here at the law school has written a chapter raising that question of that, and we all have that. In our field, in mining and oil and gas, we have constantly to be aware of, well, of the other side, which is doing. As a technical researcher, does it ever come to your mind, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So 4 months ago, before I started putting together this presentation, the first thing that I did was read a lot of the accounts of the pilots that had used, for example, the MQ-9 and the psychological impact that they had on them. And yeah, I mean, that's a hard question to answer. There's ethical issues that are involved. International borders are complicated, I think. I was recently in Korea visiting some colleagues about a month ago, and they obviously do drone work as well. I was a little bit surprised that on campus there, their rules were were strict than ours, right? And so working with them could be a potential problem there, I think, or a potential challenge, let's say, right? Especially with respect to testing. You know, technically, it's a hard question to answer from the technical perspective, because the stuff that we develop, they're not designed to go across borders, right? Some of the technologies, of course, are export controlled and what have you as well, and so that raises other technical challenges with the technology. So, yes.
Thank you. So very nice talk. So I have a more kind of technical question for this. So I'm working in the wireless communication networking area. So nowadays, so our people talk a lot about this using drones as a wireless base station, like in our wireless communication. So in this case, the drone can give us a lot of flexibility and covers more area because it can move. And also for this disaster or whatever, so drones can also bring communication power there. Okay, of course there are lots of challenges. For example, battery may be a big concern. So I want to ask that, do you have opinions on this kind of thing? Do you see a big future for this, or?
Yeah, I mean, I was involved in several proposals on that exact idea. I think it's a good idea. There are obviously technical challenges. So for example, the hovering robots that we've got here, these guys can only stay aloft maybe an hour at most, right? And so you've got technical issues there. If you're going to set up a wireless network node, you have to factor that in. Fixed wing systems can fly, right? And they can fly higher and they can stay aloft for 5, 6, 12 hours. They can set up communication networks. I think drones are good for maybe not necessarily omnidirectional communication devices where you can actually have to direct and steer and point things. I think that's a great direction to go. Yes, they can help set up networks. I mean, simple as that. The issues are how long can you keep the network up, right? Could you reconfigure the network? Absolutely, and I think that's what's really cool. You could set up an ad hoc network, bring in mobile systems to set up a permanent one, and then slowly move the ad hoc over and start branching out and increasing range and whatnot. So. Yes.
This may be a silly question, but is similar research going on and similar technical advancements in underwater drones?
They're not as exciting. No. So this is an unmanned aerial vehicle, right? And they have unmanned underwater vehicles and ground and what have you. Yes, absolutely. And the plume problem, for example, the one that we've been working on, my graduate students and I, we studied the literature for the underwater case where the oil and the pipeline industry get leaks, right? And so they need to detect that. And yes, similar research is there. Certainly, the advantage of these guys is they can go out and cover lots and lots of space. Water is pretty cool, you know, but not as much work done in the underwater community. Yeah, so but definitely research there too. Yep. Yep.
What's powering the drones? Is it just batteries, or are you using solar power, wind, or whatever?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that question. Right now, they are battery powered, so the ones that we have are battery powered. It's very easy to put a weed whacker engine, which runs on gasoline, right, on them to get longer lifetime. A cool technology is they take a gasoline or a fuel-based engine and they generate electricity to power the drone, right? That's another way to increase their flight time. Solar has been tried, and solar does work. Several companies like, I believe, either Facebook or Google with their large solar-based fixed wing. The fixed wings ones where the propellers aren't doing this, solar is good because of the amount of power that you get. These things are very, very power hungry. We're talking hundreds of amps that are coming out of the little LiPo lithium polymer batteries that we're using. So they're very power hungry. They don't fly more than, say, 30 minutes to an hour, although I think my student showed me something yesterday where somebody was building something, new battery technologies for 2 hours, right? Yeah, so that's something to watch out for. Yep. Mostly batteries, so yep, very rarely fuel.
I had a question on, or feedback from you on your opinion on security. Seems a lot of our technology today is focused on new features and functionality, and security is kind of a low priority. How do you think that's going to impact drones? Because they could, someone could hack these and weaponize these.
That's a huge problem, right? I mean, I think that's a huge problem. It's going to impact it. I mean, you're going to have drones that will have data on them. You know, you have to figure out how to secure that data. I mean, that's a hot topic right now. It's really a hot topic. And I think the more of these you put in the air and the more cameras they have, the more sensors they have, the more data you have, it could become a problem. Yep. Yep.
So I know they have, you mentioned the counter-drone technology.
Yep.
And has anybody actually been,
selling them there, or?
Well, I know that they've got rules around counter-drone technology, but has anybody been prosecuted under any of those rules that you know of?
No, I haven't paid attention to that. I know the physical counter-drone technologies. I've seen those on videos and companies and things. You know what they're doing now, right? They're, it looks like a bazooka, right? And it deploys and it sprays a net and it grabs, and then there's a parachute also, so it grabs the drone. Now they're working on software stuff, and you're going to start seeing counter-drone technology on larger buildings, and even here at the U. I mean, later. I mean, you're going to see drones flying around, right? But I haven't seen anybody yet, I think, necessarily prosecuted, to answer your question. At some point I will, right? Good question.
So you had talked earlier about how, as humans, we want to fly. And it seems like this is a lot about making them autonomous. And the growth in the industry, does that include operators?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that slide that I showed, there was a little sector on like the services that people provide.
So how much of it, like the agricultural ones, how much will that just be the farmer that purchases it versus a specialized pilot?
Both. I think farmers are very interested in using the technology for sure. Here at the U, auxiliary services, I think, they offer drone pilots at $125 an hour, right? So here, yep. So yeah, so that service is available, and people are getting pilot licenses and flying them professionally. So yeah. Now the autonomy there again, you still need somebody to, you know, it's not going to be so autonomous that it gets up and fuels itself. Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, then there's drone racing, so if you know, the joy of flight. Yeah. What you could do, it's fully manual. I mean, you're literally controlling it. Yeah. Okay, good. That's great.
For the cases where you're gathering data,
yeah.
What wireless technology? Are you using Wi-Fi or cellular?
Both. Our drones are equipped with Wi-Fi, the ones that we built here. They're flying with a computer, a full-on computer, okay. Their own operating system, Wi-Fi, and when the Wi-Fi link isn't good enough, we switch over to a longer communication link, lower data rates. We can go about 2 miles.
Is it a LoRa? What are you using?
XB system. We're using the XB system.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, the XB.
Yeah,
okay.
And those guys back there, they know all the detail. I would just butcher the.
I just wonder, you know, with the larger drones, they have to coordinate so that they don't jam each other, right?
Correct. And so those are different frequencies, the FAA and that kind of stuff. That is correct. That is correct. We play by the rules, and so we're using the commercial stuff that allows us to. Yeah, that's correct.
We'll take one more question, please.
So it's a little more of a technical question.
Sure.
Do you think the technology is reaching some kind of a bottleneck? So do you think there is something that's limiting the performance or you know, the efficiency
battery,
of the?
Yeah, battery is
You think the battery is something that's?
So please, somebody, let's come up with a better energy source. Hey, I like lithium polymer batteries, but we need to have longer flight time. Yep, that definitely battery is one. The other one for us is communication needs to be improved a little bit, I think. How do you handle all these different devices in the air? Because if you imagine millions of them in the air. You know, frames and hardware, I think if you have very robust software and robust or fault-tolerant systems, for example, the octocopter is a very popular platform simply because you've got 8, right? You have to have 4, okay? If you lose one, you've got 8 arms, so if you lose one, I think you can get away with 7, and you go all the way down to 4. If you lose 4, then what? Well, it turns out you can still get away with it if you don't care about rotation. Does that make sense? I can still hover and do this, right? So that's something that I think is important is fault-tolerant systems. So. And safety. When they come out of the air, nobody's come up with an idea of, you don't want them on your head or on your car or in your house or anything like that, right? You hope that they just turn into a hot air balloon and just go somewhere, right? So.
How much is a big one?
How much is that? It has a price tag. I believe it cost us $10,000. I'll give it to you for $10,000. Without the sensor from Nevada Nanotech is a prototype new sensor. We don't know what the cost is. They've had millions of dollars investment in that sensor, but ultimately they think that sensor will be about $100. Okay. Yes, I know. It comes with, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Dr. Leang. This was wonderful.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that was a great presentation. And one of the things that really caught my attention was the people who used it in Texas and Kansas.
Yeah.
Because when I was young, I grew up on a farm in Oklahoma, and one of my jobs was driving the cattle from one pasture to another. Where were those drones when I needed them? All right. So again, thank you so much. This was very, very interesting. Great topic. And you're going to be here along with your students to answer some questions.
Sure.
I'd also like to thank Dr. Reed for being with us today, the Gould family for their support and being with us. And I'd like to thank the library's dedicated and talented staff who always work to make this event happen. And in particular, I'd like to thank Dr. Greg Thompson for, as always, being a terrific, wonderful colleague who I enjoy working on this event with and other events that we have here at the library. I hope you'll stay and talk to your friends who are here, make some new ones, come up and look at the drones, and just think about what we could do with this great drone technology. So thank you all very much.